Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have our next guest joining us once again. Rose is joining us here again to talk more about the work she's doing. And it's Rose Simard, by the way. She's a coach and so much more to tell you about the work she does. And we're going to talk a little about divorce today. But first, let me have her introduce herself. Hello.
Oh, glad to be here, Jill. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank
So
you. Tell
great.
us a little bit about what you do. And the website. How do we find you?
Oh, okay. So my website is caimcoaching.com. So CAIMCOACHING.com. So CAIM is spelled differently. Again, CIM. And it's actually one of the reasons I named that my company that is actually it's a Gaelic term that means sanctuary. So that's what I try to provide for my clients when they're going through a divorce. So I'm a financial divorce coach and trained mediator, and I help people navigate divorce with financial savvy and as much emotional resilience as
Yeah.
possible because it is emotionally hard.
Yeah, you mentioned divorce with benefits. Spend less, share more, start fresh. We got
Yeah.
this, but not everyone
Mhm.
really has it. Yeah, that's why you're here to tell
No.
us. So tell us a little bit about the work you do and some of the people that can benefit. And I know you want to talk more about divorce today.
Yes. A lot of people there's a lot of misconceptions about divorce, and all of Canada and the United States, actually, there is no rule that says you have to hire a lawyer to get divorced. And the other thing is that a lot of people think they need to hire a lawyer to actually protect them, right? Protect their
Mm-hmm.
money, protect their stuff. But really, self-empowerment is the key, and understanding and being an active participant in the process, no matter which route you have. Even if you have a lawyer, you still have to talk to your lawyer and tell them what you want. They still have to learn about your situation. There's nobody that you can hire that are actually mind readers, right? So you have to be able to communicate and have those difficult conversations, whether it be through a lawyer, directly through, to your ex-spouse or soon to be ex or partner whatsoever. All those details are very unclear, right? But what's interesting about the divorce process is that the process is virtually the same no matter what your situation is, whether you have only debt to divide or, only a little bit equity in a house, or you have millions of dollars in businesses. It all comes down to math. It all comes down to math. So it doesn't always require a lawyer to do things. I like to tell people, if you're going to file your income taxes, would you actually hire a tax lawyer? Probably
Mm-hmm.
not. Probably not, right? The tax lawyer is going to be about the strategy, not about the execution of your money. It's
Perfect.
the same thing with lawyers, divorce lawyers.
All right. Well, tell us, for today, what areas did you want to focus on?
Well, I want to talk a bit more about the divorce process because, again, a lot of the misconceptions are there. And like I mentioned already, no matter which route you pick, the process is virtually the same for everyone. So I want to talk about what that actually looks like so people have information, because usually it's the uncertainty, not knowing what it's going to look like, that creates a lot of fear in people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two choices. And this is I heard this from a business coach that I had many years ago. Even in business, there are only two choices that can be made. One is drama or one is math, right? So there's a lot of drama, unfortunately, that is involved in divorce. And so people need to also be aware what that looks like. So drama and divorce would be wanting to get the payback. They want to actually right a wrong, right? They're there to get every little penny or as much money as possible that they feel entitled to, right? And they're willing to fight for it, right? They think that they have to launch into arguments in the sense that they're very deserving. And what people don't realize is that there is no moral justice, unfortunately, in divorce. And because it's such an emotional process, they are led to believe that if they can make their story sound so good and they can provide reasons why they should get more than their spouse, that they are actually going to get more. But in actuality, we have no fault divorce, both in Canada and the United States. So whatever happened in your relationship doesn't matter what was said or what wasn't said or what was done or wasn't done. So if you can detach from that and realize that one way of looking at divorce is like a very important business transaction because it
Okay.
all comes down to money.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So one thing I also mention is that a lot of people have this fear as well that their divorce is going to go to court, right? Like people, when spouses, there's a little bit of conflict in the beginning. It's like, if you come after me for this, I'm going to do this. And it's sort of retaliatory. And that's what typically we think divorce looks like, because that's the way it's typically portrayed in media, right? And unfortunately, there's good stories never make the news. We only hear about the bad stories. So I want to set that record straight so that people can have a good divorce if they can focus on the numbers, right? And understand that they need to understand the numbers. They need to be an active participate. If they're not comfortable with numbers, hire a coach, get someone to actually help them, right? So it's definitely worth repeating that, in the end, every divorce has come down to math. And so if you can keep that top of mind all the way through, you can essentially solve anything, right? When there's a formula and when you're dealing with numbers, everything can actually be solved. And really, divorce laws are actually formulas. They're in place to help people protect them, that they make sure they have a fair divorce, right? They're there to actually reduce conflict, right? Because they actually have a formula. They explain how property is supposed to be divided, how support is to be paid. So there is a structure that you can follow, very similar again to income tax returns. No one likes it, no one loves it, and it's not something you really want to go through. But if you do it right, it can actually be as painless as possible, right? Not
Mhm.
completely stress-free, but painless as possible.
Got it. Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
whoa. See, I've never
Yeah.
been divorced, so I don't have the personal experience. I have a lot of friends who've been divorced, and like I've heard such horror stories, and I would, they all wish after it was over they would have been done differently.
Yes, and that's actually very, very true. Looking back, and I'm not divorced, I haven't been divorced either. And so for me, I can really keep my clients very objective, right? Understanding the perspective behind it, help them work through the emotional part without getting triggered myself or without like having to back them up. Because a lot of family and a lot of friends are very good intentioned when someone's going through divorce. And they often actually will, you got to protect yourself, you got to get even, you got to make sure that you're going to get what is fair. And all that thinking, all that support creates that negative opinion of your spouse, right? So instead of saying, you know what, we want this as amicable as possible, what they're trying to do is paint their ex as a villain, right? Why they are more deserving than their others. And it's so sad to see, right? Two people who obviously cared enough for each other to actually choose to either have kids or get married, that they turn so quickly when it comes to divorce and money. And unfortunately, that negative mindset carries over in so many aspects of life. How can we isolate that in our happiness, our jobs, and how we're raising our kids? So
Yeah.
mindset is so, so important. And that's what I like to tell people again is the way you divorce or the route chosen, whether you choose to mediate, go through lawyers or do it yourself, is as much important as actually dealing with the emotions. And if you don't deal with the emotions or participate in your divorce, you're going to be off to like it's going to be hard no matter what. And it's not going to be anywhere nearly as painless as it can actually be, right? And so what people really need to know about the divorce process is the ins and outs of the different routes, right? And you can either pick one or not, like one combo or not. And what I mean is you could do some parts of it yourself. You can negotiate with your spouse directly. You could also get a mediator, and the mediator can help you in some aspects or all aspects, right? Again, you can do things, pick and choose which is the best route. You can pick lawyers, and you can actually hire lawyers on a contingency basis or a debundling of services. So you don't have to rely on a lawyer for everything about your divorce, but you can, when you need them to give advice or to double check something, you use the lawyer, very smartly, and that can actually keep your costs a lot. Another option is collaborative law as well. And that's where parties actually hire each a lawyer. The lawyers and the spouses are committed to actually staying out of court, right? They understand that they want legal guidance, but they're not out there to fight, right? They're not out there to waste their money by, arguing over the things, right? Over little things, the blender, we've heard all those horror stories as well, right? But in the collaborative law process is that the main benefit of that is that there is no threat of going to court. And that's usually what puts people on edge or gets them defensive, right? But in collaborative law, people actually sign saying, we are committed to staying out of court. And if we do end up going to court, we're actually going to have to start the whole process with new lawyers because these lawyers are not going to represent. So it motivates people to actually work in the process. And then there's also lawyer assisted mediation. You can get a lawyer advice, right? And then you can go to mediation and then work on some issues. And then you can go back and you can get mediation or advice again from your lawyer and go back to mediation. And the one thing I want to tell people, you cannot unwind years together in one talk or one set of, one afternoon. It's going to take time. So be realistic and be very patient how long it can take. And that's actually going to be one of the biggest help in not getting caught up with issues that you can't fix or issues that basically, you go back and say, oh, I wish I had done it differently. This got so out of hand so quickly. And so that's really what I tell people again, is just really understand that you don't have to rely on one type of person or professional to do it. It's more like a team sport. I also liken it to if you think about a good football team, right? A football
Hmm.
team, they have a defensive coach, they have an offensive coach, they have a quarterback has a coach, right? And they all work together as a team, but they have different objectives, right? They have different specialties that they help the team win. It's the same thing in divorce, right? I always recommend get some type of financial help, whether it be a financial divorce coach, perhaps a financial advisor that's familiar with the divorce process. There are specific financial experts called certified divorce financial analysts, which I am one of those as well. And then also talk to accountants, right? All that information, again, is the main part of the divorce that you can get that information and then you get advice by your lawyer, right? Your lawyer is actually not trained in finances. They're not trained to actually work through what your options are, and they're not trained to decide, figure out what the financial consequences are. And I don't know if I mentioned in previous podcasts or not, but the thing about what people have to understand is divorce is a relationship issue. Okay, if there is a relationship breakdown and it has financial or legal consequences. And if you can keep that definition top of mind, you'll realize that the legal is such a small part to it and almost virtually comes at the end when you need it documented up front. But a lot of people will involve lawyers too early, and that's why their divorce ends up costing them a lot. It takes a
Hmm.
lot longer than they expected, right? So again, understanding that if you can work on the relationship issues, I'm not saying that you need to reconcile or that you're going to reconcile, but you need to be able to do it as civilly as possible. I like to use the term neighborly as opposed to amicably. It's not like you're going to have your neighbors, you're going to spend a ton of time with your neighbors, but you still have to be polite because you live there, right? They're
Yeah.
the people that you see regularly. And if spouses are connected with kids, especially, they're connected for life. So make the best of that situation.
Got it. Well, thank you for
Mhm.
that. And hold on, can we just remind everyone how we can contact you? Since we
Yeah,
are
and I
only
know I've
halfway
been,
through, it's always
yeah,
important to remind them. Thank you.
yeah, and I know I'm all over the map, but there's a couple ways you can check out my website at caimcoaching.com, spelled CAIM coaching.com. I also have a free divorce Facebook group that people can join from anywhere. And there's so many resources. I go live every week to train and provide perspective. And I post every day. Some things are just regarding mindset. I post on Saturdays journal prompts again to help the emotional aspect of it because I really, really believe that if people can do this with some emotional resilience and intelligence, it actually becomes so much easier. Again, because the divorce process is the same no matter what. It's the emotions that actually change the outcomes. And so, one thing again is people can understand that there are 4 stages of divorce. And this
Oh,
is another thing. If you look up the definition of what a negotiation is, they're actually what a negotiation is part planning, it's part exchanging information so that you can negotiate, and then it's part documenting. This is the same thing with divorce. However, I added the negotiation stage. So think about this. There's 4 stages of divorce. The first stage is planning, right? Knowing where you are now and where you want to go. You want to get divorced, right? However, there's a lot in between. So if at the planning stage you can decide, okay, what is really important to me? What is it that I want to achieve throughout this process and my life to look like afterwards? And what is really important to me? What are the things that are important that I, advocate? You understand which battles you actually choose to fight, right? Because there are some things, and there are some things that are you don't care about. Let those go and work on what's really important to you. So in the planning stage, you can talk to a divorce coach, you can talk with a therapist, you can also talk with a communication and conflict coach to help set the pace or set the foundation and the vision to what you want your divorce to look like. The second stage is exchanging of financial information.
Okay.
I like to say this is like the roadmap. You have to understand what your financial picture is now and where you want your finances to look like at the end. Okay. If you have a lot of money, are you okay with spending a little bit on lawyers, right? Thinking that protecting it. If you don't have a lot of money, how do you want it to look like? How do you minimize your costs so that you have as much again at the end? And I do like to say, spend less, share more. That benefits everybody, no matter what their financial situation is. And at the financial stage, you're going to have a clear picture of what you own and owe. Okay. And then you're going to see, okay, how is this going to be? What's important to me? Do I want to keep the house? Do I want the house to be sold? And then do I want to buy a new property? Right?
Yeah.
What about retirement? All those types of things. And again, the
Mm-hmm.
financials, talk with a financial expert, financial advisors, accountants, and business evaluators in some cases. Okay. Those are good resources at that stage. And the third stage is the negotiation. That's essentially what people jump into, in my opinion, far too quickly because they don't have the right information yet. So be clear about your finances. At that point, you're deciding who's going to get what, how property is going to be divided, and determine if there's any support that's going to be required for child or spousal support. You can do any of these by yourself. You can hire a lawyer for parts of it. You can do mediation for negotiations, and you can do it yourself, right? Again, the combo, do as much as you can by yourself, and that way you're going to keep costs. And of course, the last stage, legal documentation. That's ultimately documenting everything you've agreed about and filing paperwork. And there is no rule, again, that you have to hire a lawyer, so you can file your own paperwork at the courts if you want to. A lot of people don't, so they could hire a paralegal, they could get some help by a coach in order to file documents, or they can have lawyers do it. So again, another set of advice that I wanted to end with, because I know we're getting near the end.
We got 7 minutes. We're good. We're
I
good.
know. Oh, okay, good. Because I feel like I'm like
I know,
doing
I know, I know.
giving
It's
so
okay.
much information, right? So yeah, there's a lot of questions. I obviously talked really fast and went through it. These are the type of things that I talk about in the group on a daily and weekly basis. And that's one thing I hear all the time is it feels so overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
to go through divorce because they don't know how to start. Or they've heard the horror stories and they don't want that to happen to them, or they're like they have a vision of what they want to look like, but they don't know who can actually help them execute that. So those are all things that I talk about within the group. And that is my whole mission in life, is to actually educate and provide a lot more support for people without having to be bogged down in Googling things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
understanding what's the perspective. But in this day and age, all our information is actually available online, right? All the laws are very, very clear. But do you want to do the trial and error and learn as you go? Usually people don't, because there's often a lot of mistakes they might make, and they'll be going, if I had only known that, if I'd only known this before I got started. And that's my whole goal with the group, is to educate people before they get in the throes of it and then wish they had done things differently. And so one of the things I do tell people over and over again is divorce the result and marry the process. And what do I mean by that? Like, it sounds good, right? But when you divorce the results, you actually stop worrying about whether you're going to get what you want in the end, right? You're thinking about how you're going through it versus what it's going to look like in the end, right? Keeping a vision in mind is good as to what you want the goals to look like, but you have to sort of reverse engineer to make sure that you get the goal. And that's marrying the process. And that means committing to doing and staying focused on the things that you really actually are important to you, right? Not getting distracted with the drama, right? And again, coming down to it, if you marry the process and you understand that you're going to have to go through those 4 stages, no matter what you have or what you own, right? You're going to have to go through those 4 stages. If you have parenting, you have to deal with the parents, right? You're going to have information. You're going to have to negotiate what that looks like, right? So no matter what your situation is, whether you have a business or you're actually an employee or you don't work at all, again, those 4 steps are specific and they are to the divorce process and no one can skip them. And if you do skip one of those steps, unfortunately, or stages, that's where people get really caught up. And so a successful divorce is actually about getting and sharing the right information at the right time so that you aren't taking 5 steps forward and then 7 steps back and then feeling like you're stuck and why you keep revisiting the same issue over and over again, right? So clarity is really important in terms of understanding what the divorce process looks like and what's in your control to do.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you. We still have a few more minutes. What else? What else?
Awesome. You know what? One thing that we haven't talked about is how I got into this work. Actually,
Yeah.
we have talked about that in the past. And what's really interesting, you mentioned you haven't been through divorce, I haven't been through divorce. And so a lot of people in this industry actually get into divorce coaching because they had a negative experience in divorce and they want to make sure they help people prevent those type of mistakes. Mine was a little bit different. I had always been in the financial industry, and I actually had a friend who's a family law lawyer, and I was helping her actually expand her practice and buy a new
Hmm.
office because I was a mortgage broker at the time. And she had, I was telling her I was looking for a change, and she actually told me about the certified divorce financial analyst accreditation. And she had
Yeah.
told me that, Rose, you have such a great natural way of keeping people very comfortable about money and helping them really understand what their options are and really reducing that stress and anxiety, right? Because a lot of people, money is one of those things that we're never taught how to handle or to even talk about. Have you ever realized that? Right? So a lot of
Hmm.
people in relationships don't even talk about it, right? They have different spending habits, different values around money. So putting somebody at ease at the beginning is really a priority for me because that sets the tone. And there's so many times I talk to one person just on one time on the phone and they'll say, I already feel better just talking to you because they had just have some clarity. They've taken away some overwhelm. They don't have all the answers, but they have a clear picture at least to saying, okay, I understand enough to know what the next step is. And that is really, really important too. So,
Oh,
yeah, so I talked about the stages and I'm just, backing through again, circling back is I got into this work because I realized I could help people without getting like the drama being triggering me, right? So I have this
no.
natural way of letting people, understand how much of that they can do and control. And I'm all about helping people take control for themselves, not telling them what to do. So I think in all my life, I've been more of a coach than a financial advisor or a mortgage broker. And really being is that if people don't understand why things are important, they usually don't buy into it. And then if they don't understand why things are important, they're usually not successful as well. And that's what a real effective me, a successful coach does, is that transfers the power to actually the person that's coaching. And they feel they can do it. They're not dependent on other people. Yes, they got help by someone like me or another coach, but they took control. They made the decisions. They take the steps that are required for successful, right? And if you hand over too much of your divorce and think that you're not going to be an active participant, it's very likely you're not going to get what you feel you deserve, and you're going to wonder why, you end up where you are. And that's really important. So any one bit of the last 20 minutes of me talking is get informed. Knowledge is your power. And if you're really lacking confidence about what to do, find somebody who can help you, not do it for you, but help you understand what you need to do, because that's going to make the biggest difference in your level of confidence and moving forward after divorce.
Got it. Well, thank you. And if
Mhm.
we want to reach out to you, now you can remind us again. But thank you.
Yeah, so my Facebook, I think I mentioned my Facebook. group, but I didn't say
Yep.
the name of it. Yes. So the name is Divorce by Design Empowered Ending. So if you go onto Facebook and search Divorce by Design, you can join the group for free. I have about 1,200 members now, and that's growing probably by a couple dozen a day right now. So I know there's a really good appetite for good, fair information that's going to be help people through without and taking out that overwhelm that I'm mentioning there.
Perfect. All
Or
right.
visit my website. And
Thank you
my
again.
website, yeah, is CAIM Coaching, CAIMCoaching.com. And if you'd like, you can also reach and text me or phone me at 403-975-5530.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you back and looking forward
Awesome.
to next time. Are we back
Yes,
again next week or?
we are back and we're going to be talking about high conflict divorce,
All
how
right.
that impacts. So I'm going to give some tips and some strategies and some perspective that I think will help a lot of people.
All right. Thank you so much for being here again and looking
All right.
forward to next week then. Enjoy
Thanks,
your day.
Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.